good afternoon to you and greetings from Dublin, Ireland. I'm delighted to be back here again with you. For the next 40 minutes or so, I want to share some insights with you. I'm very mindful that there's two profiles on this call. So there's a lot of people who are next generation members and they've got a lot of questions about, should I join my family business? What does governance look like in a family business? What about internationalization? How do I work with my siblings? And then you've got people who are maybe of an incumbent generation and they're concerned about, what about my next generation? How do I pass on ownership? How do I ensure my business is in a good place to pass on? And how do I ensure that my next generation members are set up for success? So I'm going to give you some insights from my country here in Ireland, on the west of Europe. I'll give you some insights from Europe, but then I'll just give you some general practical advice. When I teach, I will give you practical advice. I'm going to challenge you now for the next 35, 40 minutes. A lot of this stuff I will share with you now and I can share with you after, but it's action orientated. So it is or will or should require involvement of you and your family business after this talk. So that's the plan. I'm just going to share my slides and here we go. So if you were with me the last time we spoke, I spoke to you about Vanessa. And I mentioned to you, met Vanessa at a family business conference and she had so many questions. She said, Eric, can we grab a coffee? And she said, do I work in my family business? Do I work outside? How can I work with my dad? How do I have the conversation about ownership? So I was like, wow, okay. So my advice to Vanessa, when I spoke to you the last time, and my advice to everybody on this call, bar none, everybody needs to read one article about family business initially. It's a fantastic article. It's from the Harvard Business Review, and it's called The Test of a Prince. Fantastic. It's relatively old at this stage. It's coming on 20 years, but the logics, the mindsets are very, very good. So that's the first thing, and Maria and her team have shared that with you. But I want to build on that today. And what I do in my day-to-day job is the people you see on the screen, these are the people I work with in my university. But what makes my job very special is I work with these people who are the next generation, but I also work with their parents. So I see both sides of the coin and I can see the concerns, the aspirations that both sides have. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about both perspectives, about running and managing and sustaining a family business. But before that, I want to talk to you about wine. I know you're saying, Eric, it's 1:15 Mexico City time. Maybe we shouldn't be drinking wine at this point, but it's 7:15 Irish time, so I'm okay to have a glass of wine. But no, seriously, I want to talk to you about wine. I had a very unique opportunity about 6 weeks ago in Zurich, Switzerland. And I met a family business called Frescobaldi. And many of you maybe have drank this product of wine and they're like the product you see here on the screen. And what makes them very interesting, this is the family. This is the Frescobaldi family. They're from Tuscany in Italy. And the gentleman in the center with the kind of brown tie on stood up and spoke at the conference. And what made his talk absolutely incredible and just caught my attention from the start, he said, we're a family business and we're so proud of being a family business. Okay, fine. And then he said something amazing. We are a 30th generation family business. 30 generations. And you're like, wow. What can we learn from these wealth of experience? You think about wars, world wars, famines, civil wars. He has experienced everything, their family business. And I want to tell you a little bit of some of the insights that this family business have given. But it doesn't matter whether you're 30th, 20th, 10th, second, or first generation family business. The logics are exactly the same. I'm going to share you a little bit with them now. I've written here tasks and homework. I'm going to give you homework. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to put my teaching cap on. I will give you homework. Hopefully I have a pen and a piece of paper. First thing I would encourage you to do, if you're a current, but more importantly, if you're a next generation member, start to think about vision. It's a big word and it's a conversation a lot of family businesses don't have. Question I have is, what is our vision for our family business? Very simple question, but I dare to ask, how often have you had that conversation? And how often have you had it with yourself? What do you want from your family business? What do your siblings want from your family business? What do your parents want from your family business? Or what does your spouse want from your family business? My suggestion to you is to have this conversation facilitated. Now, when we look at family business and we think, what's their vision? What do they want from their family business? A values-driven business, okay? They want to know or talk about family unity and purpose. But what does that mean? They want family collective. They want love. They want harmony. They want to attend weddings and funerals and everything in between and have harmony and purpose. Stewardship and longevity. They want to talk about prosperity and wealth. They want trust and respect. Community development, wherever they're from, whether it's in Mexico City or here in my country of Ireland. They want to have an entrepreneurial spirit. But what does that look like? Is it you want to talk about, we want to be in new markets, new products. We want transparency. I want transparency from my generation, from my next generation. I want it for my siblings. I want it for my cousins. We want to talk about social entrepreneurship. That's very important to us. We're very concerned about our environment, our sustainability, or cancer charities, or churches in our community. And governance. We want to have clear, transparent governance. So some of the topics when we talk about vision and we talk about families coming together to see what do we want to create together. Some of the topics you may wish to consume. And if you start to think about these things, it's a really good starting point. So think about vision. Now, the second one is if you're a next generation member, is know your number. This is key. You might have done this. You might have read articles about family business, but you'd be amazed. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies right down to SME or small, medium-sized businesses right across the world. Knowing your number is a really good starting point. We all have numbers on this call. So 40 odd of us on this, we all have a number in a family business. So you've seen this before. This is not new to you. Every family business, whether you're in wine, you're in hotels, coffee shops, manufacturing, it doesn't matter. Every family business is represented in these three circles. We've got our ownership, we've got our family, and we've got our business. And if we look at early research, if you want to say that studied families, they're not meant to go together. But ironically, 100 years ago, before Google or Facebook or Twitter, or any of the big corporates, the only business that existed in this world was a family business. But they don't sit well together. They're conflict driven. And there's almost a paradox there. Why? Because if we think about it, the business is driven for growth, opportunity, somewhat rational, objective, new markets, but the family is driven about harmony, love, respect, trust, opportunity for all. So they don't normally sit well together. My challenge for you, if you're a current or next generation member, is to start to map out who is involved in your family business. If you can understand who the key stakeholders are, then you can start to plan your leadership strategy. So, number 3 there, let's start off at number 3, the employees. What do employees want in a family business? They want opportunity, they want meritocracy, they want to develop their career, they want respect, they want long-term security in and of a family business. Look at number 2. Number 2 in this circle is the family. These are family members who have no ownership, no involvement in the business. What do they want? It could be, for example, the mother in the family business. They want love, respect, harmony. They want family gatherings to be, full of love and joy and respect. Absolutely. But you can see why they're somewhat different to what the business may want. Look at ownership. Number 1, the ownership person. This is an owner. This could be a venture capital company, a private equity company. They're not really concerned about the family orientation of the business. They want new opportunities, new markets. They want money. So their aspirations are very different to number 2. What about number 4? I see this a lot. Next generation members who say, Eric, I love my parents, but I don't want to work in waste management. I'm a medical, or I'm a doctor, or I'm a teacher. I don't want to work in the industry. However, I have ownership and I am family. What do I do? Number 5 is the person who has ownership, works in the business, but they're not family. So you can see how maybe their interest may be very different to the number 2, the family. Number 6, this is almost a scary place to be for a lot of family members. The reason I say it to you is these people are family, like this is a brother and sister I've worked with. These people are family, they work in the business, but at the moment they've no ownership. So it's very difficult to make big strategic decisions about acquisitions, divestments, new markets, new products, taking on new senior staff, new board chairman, whatever it might be. And then the last one is number 7. This is a person who has to manage them all, the expectations of the family, the expectations of the business, and the expectations of the owners. Now, so hopefully you roughly get the different numbers on the screen. So what would you do? And we talk about a masterclass. And if you leave this and you grab a coffee in the afternoon, I challenge you to do this task. And the challenge I have for you is on the next slide. I want you to map out your 3 circles today. Who's in the 3 circles and what do they want? And then the next thing I want you to do, what are your 3 circles going to look like in 10 years? Well, okay, well, my kids are 16, 17 years of age. Okay, but in 10 years time, they're only 26. All right, yeah, okay. So they may want opportunity in the business. They may want ownership. Okay, great. And if we have aspirations to grow the business into new markets, and we're going to need to bring in managers and professional managers, but we need to give them opportunities. Okay, right, I can see the challenge there with talent and talent retention. So my suggestion to you folks is populate the 3 circles today and look at the 3 circles into the future. The third piece of homework is to look at the life cycle of a family business and of your family business. It doesn't matter whether you're 2nd, 3rd, 4th, it doesn't matter what generation you are. Every family business goes through a life cycle. And it's amazing to see what initiatives you're doing or what initiatives you need to do in this life cycle. It's a life cycle, and I've shared the paper with you. The paper comes from a very good friend, colleague called Justin Craig, and I know Justin has spoken to you as well. The paper is shared with Maria and our team, but this is called the 4 L's. This is very practical. It's very easy to understand, but it's something I want you to start to think about. Right, okay, what are we doing for each of the L's? Now, they're called L's because learning. There's 4 learning stages in the evolution of the family business. It doesn't matter how big you are, how small you are, or what industry you are, or what generation you are. Family businesses need to learn across the 4 stages. Okay. Especially relevant if we're preparing the next generation for success. It doesn't matter if they're not going to be the CEO of the family business, but the next generation would say, listen, we're going to have professional management to run our business. That's fine. But we're going to sit on the board, or we're going to be responsible owners. Okay, what's my expectation as a responsible owner? So the first L is learn business. If you are a current generation and you have next generation members, I challenge you, what are you doing to ensure your next generation, your children, or your brother or sister's children, what are you doing to ensure they're learning business? Are they studying accountancy? Is it they're doing engineering? Are you in the wine industry and they're doing understanding of the depth of knowledge about perfecting a magnificent bottle of wine? Let me give you an example. I won't talk to you much about Guinness. Guinness is an Irish product. It's a beer. It's a brown beer. It's very nice brown beer. But I'm not here to talk to you about Guinness. And I'm not here to talk to you about whiskey. This is a very famous Irish whiskey called Jameson. You might have heard of it. But I am here to talk to you about these 2 boys. These 2 boys are called Teeling Whiskey. This is Jack and Stephen Teeling. Teeling is their surname, and Teeling is the name of their family business. You might have, and I'll tell you a little bit about what they do, about their product first. This is their product, Teeling Whiskey. And what makes this product very, very, very innovative is if you go to cocktail bar, so maybe you're going to a cocktail bar in Mexico City tonight, Thursday night, or you go to a cocktail bar in Hong Kong or Singapore, wherever part of the world you're dialing in from. These guys have done something very clever. They've applied this blue ocean strategy. And I won't go into blue ocean strategy, but it's an amazing, amazing textbook you have to read. So they've applied blue ocean strategy. So let me tell you what they did. If we think of a whiskey drinker, typically we think of men, and we think of men of a particular age, typically 40 years plus. And that's what Jameson are doing. Men 40, 50 years plus. These guys said, no, we're focused on, this is where the blue ocean is. We're targeting on females and females sub 30 years of age. You go to big cocktail bars right across the globe, you'll see Teeling whiskey in these bars. Now, what's my point? Their father, from a very young age, took their education, their learned business very, very seriously. One of the things was very interesting was they went to your country. They spent time in tequila, understanding the processes of manufacturing your beautiful alcoholic drink, to understand how can a family business grow, scale, and internationalize product in particular. So the first L is, what structures are you putting in place to educate your next generation? Now, if you decide to enter your family business, I challenge you then to think of learn our family business. And what that means is, what has made your family business the success it is today? Say that again. What has made your family business the success it is today? Is it the reputation? Is it the location? Is it the quality of the food you produce? Is it the quality of engineering you produce? What makes it? What's your secret sauce? And I'll give you an example of a family business I worked with here in Ireland. This, as you see on the screen, this is a family business called Flavin. It's an Irish name. And what's interesting with this family business, this gentleman here, you see with the gray hair, the second from the right, this is John Flavin. John is the 7th generation of his family business. And what the family business make is this: breakfast cereal, or it's called porridge, the breakfast cereal, oat-based meal. But his next generation, they did everything correct. They worked outside their family business. They worked in another related food company, not in Ireland. They worked abroad. They came back to their family business and they met me. And I asked them that question: what's your secret sauce? What makes you unique? Okay, let me think about that. Then they came back and said, okay, this is where they manufacture. And what you might notice about this picture is, okay, it's beautiful. It's lovely green, and you can see the cornfields in the background for their family businesses. They make oats. But you should never put a manufacturing plant here, because the roads are bad. It's in a very rural location. It's far away from the airport. It's far away from the ports. So it's not a great location to put a manufacturing site. So I asked them again the question: what makes your family business unique? Then what happened was, when we think about parents and children, our society, my society and your society, are very conscious about what we give to our children, especially the importance of breakfast. Parents want trust. Parents want traceability of product. Parents want understanding of, the environment in which product was created. So they then understood that one of the key sources of their product was their reputation, their family reputation, their local greenfield orientation to it. And that's what they've done. They have created a full brand. And the brand, if you go to their website, if you look at their product, it's fully family branded. Like you see here, the story is on the back. Now, understanding the brand, utilization of their family brand allowed them to do this. We all love coffee. I drink far too much coffee. But if we look at coffee sales in the world now, people are not drinking as much milk. People are drinking oat milk and almond milk and all these different types of milk. So this is where they pivot into, is understanding what makes your family business the success it is. The third thing, L3 and L4, sorry, I'll say it again. L1 and L2 are working in the business. So understanding, I've educated in, for example, in engineering or business. Okay, great. Learning our business. Okay, our key success is the quality of whiskey we make, or the quality of the reputation of our brand. Or I work with a family business and they're in the funeral industry, the funeral parlor industry. And their key aspect of their success is shaking hands with people. It's about community. It's about meeting people at a time of grief. You have to be there as a family member to give them a hug, to give them sympathy in their time of grieving. So the next one then is working not in the business, is working on the business. So my question to you when you learn to lead, but you got to remember the second activity I gave you. Sorry, the first activity I gave you today, your first piece of homework was the 3 circles. You got to lead in the 3. So if you meet me for a coffee, I'll ask you this. What leadership are you doing in your ownership governance? What leadership are you doing in your family governance? And what leadership are you doing in your business governance? Most people will say, they'll talk to me about their business governance. Eric, we have a board and I'm great. Yeah, perfect. What about the ownership group? We don't really have one. Okay, there's your problem. What about your family governance? They don't really have it. There's a bit of conflict. Yeah, okay, there's your problem. So when you're talking about a family business, now leadership is different in a non-family business, but in a family business, if you want to be the leader of the future, you got to think of 3 types of leadership. Leadership in your family, your ownership, and your business. This is an example of exactly what happened. This is a great family business called Kyo's. And I'll tell you a little bit about Kyo's now and how you might know of Kyo's. If any of you had the opportunity to fly on Emirates, Emirates is obviously a Middle Eastern airline. If you've ever flown with Emirates Airlines, in either first or business class, you get their product, this crisp company. Amazing story of a family business. However, these 3 brothers took over from their father, Peter, this man here in the set. But very quickly they realized, we got to figure out how we're going to work together. We're very different. They're very different aspirations. We've got, some of us want to have our spouses working in the business. Some of us want to go into new markets, new regions. Risk appetite is changing. So they could see it coming, a big train coming of a disaster. They'll say that to you. We need to get our governance in place here. And that's how they learned to lead, by putting structures in the 3 aspects to it. Now, the last L, remember it's a learning aspect to it, is learning to let go. And you can lead by letting go. And I want you to think about, in some family businesses, the current generation sometimes stay on for too long, which is not often a good thing. Or they pass on ownership at an inappropriate time. You should have given it your ownership on 10, 15, 20 years ago. In my country, the big age is 65. If you meet anybody who comes from an Irish family business, they'll say, 65, you got to get out. It's tax. I'm not sure what it is in your country, but we can have that conversation. But learning to let go. And when we look at the exit strategy of family business CEOs, this is what I might have mentioned this to you the last time. The research would show the average tenure of a Fortune 500 company, whether it's a North American company, whether it's Mexican or Irish, it doesn't matter. The average tenure of a Fortune 500 company is 4 to 5 years. Okay. The average tenure of a family business is 23 years, the CEO. They don't like to leave. It's a challenge to leave. So I challenge you to think, what's your exit strategy? Maybe you're a current generation member, or you're thinking about, yeah, my dad or my mother, whoever it is in your family business. You're going to find 5 types, largely. One is the monarch. The monarch is like what you see in Britain. The monarch will only exit the throne upon death. That man or woman is going to stay in that leadership position until the very end. They'll be carried out in a box. That is not always a good thing in a family business. There are other roles a CEO who's a senior member of a family business can take, not always the best decision to keep them in the CEO position. The second one then is, some of you might recognize this as the general. The general at a particular period announces their time to leave. Yeah, son or my daughter, I'm leaving it to you. But they're the person who's on the golf course and they always have their mobile phone turned on. They're always ready to come back in if their son or daughter is not up to it. They're always not really exited the business. And that's not a good thing either, because employees don't know who leads this business, who makes the decisions. Suppliers don't know who makes the decisions. So the general is one we do see as well. The ambassador is almost the ideal scenario. Maybe this person was the CEO and they say, you know what, I'm going to give my next generation a good opportunity to lead and drive this business forward. But I'm going to move into a more of an ambassadorial role. I'm going to take on the chairman of the board. Fine. I go to board meetings, obviously, I chair the board, but I also go to any openings of new product launches. I go and meet with key customers, and I'm there as the face of the business, but I'm very much taking a backward step in the ambassador. The governor. The governor is like Jack Welch. You don't see this too often in a family business. They say at the age of 60, I'm leaving. And they go off on their yacht around the Caribbean and they don't come back. That doesn't really happen in a family business. The governor is not that common. The inventor. The inventor is maybe it's your first generation business and your dad is just crazy for new ideas. He loves new products. He loves new technology. He's always working on a new product. But then you got to think about, okay, he maybe is not the best person to lead this business, but how do I get him into all that depth of knowledge? He maybe could be the key resource for my children. So he, as the senior generation, is educating the next generation with regard to knowledge, creativity, and innovation in the family business. So the inventor. Folks, your homework, and I will be checking next week on your homework, but all joking aside, my suggestion to you, if you're going to take this leadership of your family business serious, the first thing to do is have a facilitated conversation about your vision. What do you want? What does your spouse want? What does your siblings want? What does the family want? You will be amazed about the big families across this world who don't have this conversation. Amazed about the numbers of it. Second, know your number. There's 7 numbers in a family business. Know what your expectations are and know what the other 7 want. If you start to think about not just your tunnel vision, think about what other people may want. That's a very good starting point for you. And the third thing is be mindful of the life cycle of your family business. Be mindful of learning business, learning our business, learning to lead, and learning to let go. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Definitely a very thoughtful introduction or masterclass for the sake of our session. I have a question, and I'm waiting for, here we have more questions on the chat. But what will be the I don't know if you can,
yes, I can see
list but I mean the challenge, the most challenging issue when it comes to passing the baton, it is when you talk about succession. So what is it that the incumbent generation or the incumbent leader should or should not think about this as a moment, as a process, so why is it that succession, when we talk about succession, we immediately think of I will say the most challenging issue for family business to continue the legacy. What have you found, or what can you share with us about this? What might be in the brain, in the heart, and of the whoever is making that decision and making that move around the 4L circle or life cycles?
The one thing you see about family firms, and I challenge you to think about your family business. Are you a family first family business or a business first family business? Say that again. Are you a family first family business or a business first family business? Your heart will always go for a family first family business, but that's not always the right thing. You see altruism, you see nepotism, you see an opportunity, everybody get a job because your surname is Clinton or Murphy or Jones or whatever your surname is. Oh yeah, there's an entitlement in the family. That's not correct. That leads to conflict. If you're a business first family business, you're the ones who've thought about the need for governance in the 3 circles. It's not easy. Of course it's not easy. And it brings, someone has asked me a question here. What can a family do if the vision of each generation is totally different? Okay. Is there any advice or exercise we can do? So my suggestion to that is the members need to want to have a conversation. First thing. Second thing is you need to get a facilitator. It won't work with your dad doing it or the chairman doing it. It doesn't work. It won't work. It's too emotional. It gets too subjective. You need objectivity. A simple task I would encourage you to do, and what I would do, is get a survey. Get a survey. The facilitator will do it. Send it to every family member on the topics we've spoken about. What do you want in regard to, for the future of your family business? What do you want in 10 years' time? They'll tell you all different things. Document all of the feedback. Put it out there and start to see where it clusters as themes come about. We don't know who said it, but we're starting to see, yeah, okay, there's difference here with regard to maybe risk, with regard to wealth, with regard to dividend, with regard to liquidity mechanisms. Yeah, of course there is. But if you're serious about this and you're a business first family business, conflict is inevitable. I get that. But where we see conflict coming up in a family business is the family businesses that don't have the policies. So a lot of families will say, I ask you, what's your dividend policy? We don't have one. What's your liquidity policy? We don't have one. But that's not right. Say it's myself and my two brothers, and we're in a family business. And I love them, but I don't want to work in the business anymore. I'm out. I've had enough. I'm going to take my money and I want to exit the business. You've got to see what liquidity mechanism have you got to exit your family business. So to go back to that lady's, or whoever's that question was, facilitator, survey, anonymous survey, opportunity to have the conversation in person. Write it down, debrief it, discuss it, lots of conversation. That's my initial suggestion, a practical suggestion to get started on the vision conversation. It's going to be difficult. Of course it's going to be difficult. But it's understanding and having the conversation. But the conversation, just to say this, it needs, I don't like the word professionalism. I find that very disrespectful to family businesses. That's like saying to you, your family business is not professional. That's not correct. What you do need is formalism or formalization. And I challenge you to see what structures do we have to have an ownership conversation. And most family businesses don't have one. That's what you need to start as you, as the next generation of leaders, start thinking about ownership governance. What have you got in ownership governance? What have you got in family governance? And what have you got in business governance?
I guess you can read the.
Sorry.
Yeah, perfect. No, there are a couple of questions from the audience. I don't know if you want to read it yourself, and keep. Yeah, feel free to.
Yeah, absolutely. So somebody's asked, have you found a difference on the average time a leader stays in charge depending on the size of the business? Yeah, of course. The bigger the business, obviously, the more demand on a person. Maybe it's an international presence that one has to travel more regularly. Maybe family commitments will vary. But in answer to your question, no is the answer. I don't see a difference between the size of the business and the tenure of it. But my suggestion to you is to surround yourself with, like, this is very cliche, but with good people. But everybody knows that. But not just the good people. And if you are a next generation member, think about who's in your top management team. Who are the people who's your CFO? Who's your CTO? Who's your CEO? Or maybe you're smaller. It doesn't matter what size you are, but who's your top management team? Right, perfect. And then for some of the families on this call, I challenge you to start thinking about above that. Who's our board? And if you're to ask me about family businesses, one of the most common themes I see in a family business, I ask a family, do you have a board? Yes, we do. Great. And then I look, or I attend their board meeting, or interview the board members. I'm like, that's not a board. What you have is a management group or a management team. You're talking about operational issues. You're not strategic. If you're kind of think of a forest, you're down in the forest. You're looking at trees. But you should not just be above on the tree line. You need to be at 30,000 feet. That's what a board needs to be. So when we think about you and your leadership in a family business, think about who you're surrounding with the leadership team. Think about the board. Who's on your board? Do you have family members, which obviously you will, who are family owners? Do you have independent directors, which I would suggest you do? Who's the chair of the board on it? So I'll pause with that. I can give you lots more advice on it, but I just want to stop at that and take some more of your questions. In your experience working on other companies before entering the family business is really, but yes. If I could give you any suggestion, guys, if you're a next generation member, get out of the family business. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to you, but some of you will have worked in the family business. That's fine. I've worked with, like, it's kind of literally somewhat half and half. Some people decide to go straight in. That's perfect. But if you have the opportunity and your current generation are encouraging you to, listen, we're open. If you want to work outside, that's fine. I would encourage you to do that. And I would encourage you, if you're on this call and you are a current or a next generation member, I would encourage you to have a family employment policy. One thing I would say is I'm giving you lots of information here. I apologize in advance, but for some of you, this information will be relevant and other things will be relevant. But the first thing is look into a family employment policy. Some of the multi-generational family firms in my country, and even I've studied firms in your country, will stipulate that you must work outside your family business for 5 years. And you must be a manager in another business before you can even be interviewed for this family business. So my suggestion to you is, yes, get out of your family business and potentially get out of your country. Go and see what family businesses are like in France or Germany or Spain or in North America, whatever it might be. So my suggestion is, yes. The reason I would say that to you is credibility. Because it's difficult to go straight into a family business because people go, yeah, you got the job because your name is X. Whereas if you could say, you know what, I've worked outside, I've lived in London, I was a senior manager for PwC, or I was a senior manager for Bain or McKinsey, great. I worked on these types of projects. I was promoted through the organization. Here's my CV. I've done a master's qualification in finance. It helps. And it makes your transition process, if you're going into a leadership in your family business, a lot easier. My suggestion to you, and it's a very good question, thank you for asking the question, read the Tests of the Prince article. It's the Harvard Business Review. It's very easy to read, but very, very practical.
They do have that article already. And I will add to your comment, Eric, to your last comment. Even though you do that as a hypothetical case, and you say it helps, but it doesn't solve the problem. And the problem or the issue is to communicate or have those conversations in place sooner than later. Because if you have no relation with the family business, still the employees or the management team might think or might say that you get that promotion because you are the son or the daughter of the owner or whatever. So we cannot say that by doing that, working outside the family business, the problem is solved, right? Yeah, we have to do more things, but that's my comment on that. And you got another very good question as well from the audience. So I don't know if you
gave us some idea on how to do things in order to get the next generation involved. But what can you say about the parents that do not do nothing to involve the next generation, even though there are 20 kids with ages 17 to 31 years old, and most of them in college and others doing master's degrees? So your question, I suspect, is a very good question, is you're looking at a scenario, you've got 20 children, and ultimately they are the next generation, obviously, but they're the next generation of owners. Because your wealth or your ownership is going to be passed on to, I don't know what your ownership structure is, but it's going to be passed on to them. Yeah, of course. So, and then those 20 in 30 years time are going to have 40 and 80 and it just grows. But a magnificent legacy and a very, I would even say, beautiful thing you can do for your family business is to put the structures in place that it doesn't matter whether you've 20 or 40 or 80 or 160 or whatever it is to put the structures in place. Now, when I talk about structures in a family business, and I suspect you're talking about ownership here, is do you have a shareholders agreement? Maybe you say, we do. Perfect. Do you have a family employment policy? Because not all 20 of the kids can work in the business. No, not at all. It's not realistic. Do we have a family employment policy? Okay, right. Within the employment policy, we'll say what's the expectations of joining the board? Because not every 20 of the kids can join the board. Maybe they're not up to it joining the board. So what's your employment policy? Do you have a family constitution? If you haven't read it, I'm happy to share family constitutions with you. I have many I can share with you. But do you have a family constitution? So in answer to your question, if you've done nothing and your next generation are in university, that's okay. The first thing I would say to you is relax. Most families are in that situation. So you are not abnormal at all. If anything, it's very normal. Start to look at governance in the three circles, because it's like a stool with three legs. If you've got two good legs and one leg which is short, it's going to fall. That's where families are failing. We all know about family businesses that have conflict, lots of conflict. But why are they having conflict? They're having conflict because they have disagreement about dividend. They have disagreement about liquidity. They have disagreement about investment. They can be resolved relatively easily with policies. Now, it's easy. The policy, this document, if it's a liquidity policy or investment policy or risk policy or dividend policy, that's easy. You get your lawyer to write that. That's easy. The process is the hard bit. And somebody asked me the conversation earlier on about vision and people having different visions in the family business. It's the same here. You need to start the process of putting these structures in place. Don't get, what's a lot of you hitting me with there. Start off slow. See how, for example, do we have, I don't know how your ownership structure is, but do you have a forum or an opportunity to have an ownership discussion? How often do you meet as owners? And if I don't know what your size of your business is, but what information are you getting from your board to your ownership group? Some family businesses will have what's known as an FBC, a family business council. That's okay. That's something else you could start to look into. So, and it's hard to give you specific advice just from your comment, but the first thing I would say is you're very normal. You're not abnormal. And that situation is quite common, actually. So maybe if you want to add a bit more to it, I'm very happy to expand on it. What do you recommend when there are many members on number 7 and low members on number 2? Let me just to help my memory, just for other people on the call, I'm just going to share the slide just so, because I understand what your number is, but I just want to, here, one sec, sorry. I just want to share my slide so other people can see what exactly I'm talking about. So somebody asked me here about your numbers. So you said, somebody's saying if there's many people in number 7, so the number 7 one is, it's someone who has ownership, business, sorry, they have ownership, they're family and they work in the business, right? And you're saying then there's not number 2. I don't understand what that means. Number 2 is just family members. So say, for example, my wife is, educating my next generation, so my children, but my wife is not working in my family business. So in a family business is often a big conversation. Our spouse is involved. Yes, they should be involved. And let me just answer that first. They don't have to be involved with ownership. That's not what I mean. But a spouse in a family business is educating the next generation. They're educating the next generation in a family business. So a lot of family businesses will create what's known as a family assembly. And in a family assembly, what happens is it might meet once a year. And what the family assembly is, we're on a very high level, the family members are given an update on the business. And it's because they carry the name, they're educating the next generation, as I said, they're importing the values into the next generation. So be very mindful of isolating non-family members. I don't mean you have to give them ownership or involvement in the business, no, but there is an opportunity for non-bloodline members in a family business to get involved in and of the family business itself. What can the next generation do if their father, the founder, thinks it's better to divide the business and give a piece or a business line? Okay, this again is very common to every sibling, but they want to stick together and continue growing the business as one unit. Okay, really good question. So let me give this scenario. It's maybe you've got a portfolio of businesses and the father saying, yeah, you're going to take one in Mexico City, this business, you're going to take one in Monterey, and somebody else is going to take one in Cancun. Very, very typical. But that can happen. But your suggestion is we want to stay as one. So we want to stay almost at the portfolio level or the corporate level. If you're talking about strategy, the first one would be business strategy, working at just one business. But you're trying to say you want to focus on corporate strategy. You want to be at almost at the level that you're talking about the portfolio, an assessment of the different businesses in the portfolio. What advice do I have for that? You're saying your father wants to divide it. I think the question would be to understand why the founder wants to divide it. I suspect the founder wants to divide it is for this. I don't know your family scenario, but if we had a coffee, and I'm very happy to have a coffee with you later in the week or next week, I suspect your situation is your dad wants to keep harmony. Give that to one sibling, that to another sibling, that to another sibling, keep them apart, everybody's happy. That kind of does work sometimes, but it doesn't always work because it can get kind of us versus them. It doesn't feel like it's a collective often. So I would suggest what works very well, but your father's concerned is suspected with conflict. So if you could start to look at the conflict resolution mechanisms in family firms at the portfolio level, that's a really good start. Start reading more about, no, I don't mean bringing in a mediator where you and your brother just can't agree to disagree. I'm talking about if you have policies with regard to investment. What is our investment policy? What will we invest in? What will we not invest in? What type of debt will we take on? Are we open to equity? Are we going to work with private equity? You have to start having these conversations. And then when you have these conversations, you document them in a policy. And then your founder will go, you know what? This next generation are pretty savvy. They're starting to think about issues that not just can come up, will come up. These issues there will be a difference of opinion. But if you start to address these topics, have the policy, it can help the founding generation to go, they've thought this through. Typically what you find is the business it's very hard to say on you've written 20 words of text, but largely the business can often do better if it works at the portfolio level, at the corporate level. My suggestion to you. Happy to have a further conversation, but at the portfolio level is often better. But if you're working at the portfolio level, you're a higher level. So I suspect, I would ask you, where's your board? And then where's the board? Do the independent businesses have a board? Or what's the reporting structure? So if you're saying, well, we have 3 businesses, great. But what's the governance structure at the top of each business? And how do the 3 businesses report into the parent company, if you want to say? That's where you want to operate. So start to think about those structures. And then separate to the parent company is you as owners. So you have an ownership form. But my question to you is, how regular do you meet? What type of information do you get from the board and the policies you have in place for things like liquidity and dividend? It's not that complicated. People make it complicated. It's not really. But start to look at the policies in particular, I think might help you. What would you recommend? Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead with that last question, please.
Yeah, are we okay with time? Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry.
that would be the last question. Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect. What would you recommend when the owner does not want to lead the company and has autocratically? Okay, so you're saying it's a monarch. He or she just doesn't want to leave the business. It can help. I don't know what your situation is with regard to professional managers or trusted advisors in the business. Typically, if it's a scenario, if you have a board, my suggestion to if you have a board of directors in the business, well, then theoretically the CEO reports into the board, and he or she is held accountable to the board. If the board is at the operational level, then you have a problem. But if the board is at a strategic level, then they should say, this is not really where we want to be. We want to grow now. And who tells the board where the business wants to be is the ownership. So let me say that again, because this is important. The owners of the business decide what they want the vision of the business to be, what they want with regard to growth, new markets, new opportunity. They then tell the board say, right, this is what the ownership want. We're going to run the business this way. Part of that, then the CEO reports in. If you're saying the autocratic leadership of the business, if he doesn't want to leave, well, then I would suggest more independence on your board can help to have a pretty sobering conversation with a CEO in a family business that doesn't want to leave the structure. But you're staying on. That's not the correct approach. The autocratic style it's not going to work because you're almost setting the next generation up for failure. And that's very important. Your father, your mother, they love you. Of course they love you. And they want you to succeed. They want their grandchildren to be so proud of your family business. But taking on an autocratic leadership and not even contending the conversation, that's not right. That's not a correct approach for a family business. And that's not going to help longevity of the business.
Absolutely agree. Thank you, Eric. And thank you all for making this rich conversation a reality. I truly appreciate it. And again, thank you, Eric.